Welcome to Discovering. It's late summer. That's a great time to spend some time in the UP woods hunting. Mushrooms, that is.
It is mid-August, and we've started to come into what we call the late summer, early autumn mushrooms.
And we'll pay a visit to a farm that turned into an attraction. Stick around, that's all tonight, right here on Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forest thick and healthy, with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill. The eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
This past spring, I was in the woods with Matt from Shiitake Creek Mushroom Company in search of morels and other spring edibles. I was again back with Matt to find out what we can expect to find popping up in the late summer, early fall woods of the UP.
So we're out here at Upper Stop checking out the goods in God's grocery store, and it is mid-August, and we've started to come into what we call the late summer, early autumn mushrooms. My personal favorite autumn mushroom is the hedgehog. The hedgehog, or Hydnum rhapodnum would be the Latin for it, is also known as the sweet tooth fungi. And the reason it's known as the sweet tooth fungi is because underneath the cap, there aren't gills and there aren't pores. It looks like stalactites or icicles or teeth. Whatever you call them, these spore structures that emit, obviously the reproductive spores are different looking than most fungi. And that's one of your easiest ways to identify it. It's going to have a buff to light cream to almost dark copperish tint to the cap, white, and it has a bruising reaction, which means if we scratch it, it's going to stain reddish like the cap. So that's very easy to find. These guys are very firm. They're very meaty, much like a portobello, and they have a light sweetness to them, kind of like a white button and an oyster would. But here's where it gets really good. They have a fine cheese flavor. You can only really describe it as a fine cheese. Absolutely amazing. That makes this mushroom, in my personal opinion, the absolute best for sauteing and serving with the steak. Just for whatever it's worth, I get asked 100 times in market, what's the best mushroom to saute and serve with the steak? This is it. The hedgehog mushroom is second to none in that category. There are a million other uses. It makes an Alfredo that's out of this world. However we're using it, you see that I pulled it up, and generally you're going to, I don't have my knife with me, it's in the truck. You're going to shave it like a pencil, right? And you want to maximize the amount of this that you get. This is a beautiful stage. There's no bugs in it yet or anything like that. As they get older, mini mushrooms will look gorgeous until you pick them up and they feel like they're hollow inside because the bugs have had on them. These guys are still firm and dense and meaty. So head out to your woods, and like always with these summer mushrooms, it's about oak trees, right? We're just bird dogging oak trees, and we're looking for the mushrooms that grow with them. The more oak trees, the better. The bigger, the better. Up to a certain point, if two or three of you can't get your arms around it, it might be too big for putting off chanterelles or hedgehogs, etc. Keep looking. They're out there. They're waiting on you to come find them. This mushroom, the bluet, Clitosebe nuda, is in season. The wood bluet is one of my favorite mushrooms. It's very meaty like a portobello, very earthy like a portobello. Once you've had it, you will refer to portobellos as tasting like a bluet. They're that earthy and meaty and delicious. One of the definitive telltale signs that this is a bluet is this large base at the bottom. And when you pull it up, it oftentimes have a pile of duff and other forest resources just kind of clung onto it there. These guys never ever occur alone. We start peeling back the forest here. I think this is the first one that's ready. There'll probably be 500 of these in this 2-acre area. This is an absolutely delicious mushroom, well worth your time, but you need to get it before the bugs do. That's the biggest issue here. Yep. This one's a little buggy. You can see the bugs have had at it, but this is kind of indicative of bluets, is that the bugs really love this mushroom. So the sooner you can find them before they get bigger and the veils open, and the cap opens, the better. Late summer, early autumn, and the mushroom we're after today is the black trumpet. Craterellus cornucopides, or phalax being the Latin for them. This is one of the harder mushrooms to find, not because it's not plentiful, but because it's so hard to see on the forest floor. This mushroom, which we see right here, is incredibly great camouflage. Now, this isn't what I would consider a table mushroom. What I mean by that is table mushrooms are good for sauteing and eating or putting in dishes, etc. This mushroom is what I call a flavor mushroom. It's incredibly earthy, and it is insanely floral, like a bouquet of apricots that are overripe almost. This mushroom makes the best like butter pasta sauce or Alfredo or mushroom soup that you can imagine. I really like to dry these and grind them and work them into different rubs and mixes for soups and things like that. So if you happen to stumble across these, generally when we're out looking for them, I'll actually basically stumble across them. You'll see one poking up out of a mossy area, and it's so definitive because the moss is a sharp contrast. Then you begin to look around and you find more. They're very, very rarely just one there. So this mushroom is going out of season now. We won't see it again until next year. One of the fun things about this mushroom is that you can see the spores here on the side, and they're actually pink, which is kind of cool. Can you imagine how many of these it takes to make a pound? We're down in a lowland area. It's been a little dry, and that's one of the better tips I can give you guys is if it's dry, go where the moisture is, not where it isn't. And as we're down here checking out some other stuff in the area, we have down hemlock, and hemlock means one mushroom. Red reishi, Janoderma sugae would be the Latin for it, and it is an extremely potent antiviral. It's great for all the internal organs, and kind of that Eastern medicine thing of what it looks like is what it treats. This looks almost like an internal organ or a blood-filled organ. So it's great for the blood, all the blood-filled things. One of the better parts about this mushroom is it's extremely potent anti-inflammatory, and above all else, antiviral, which in today's world of pandemic living cannot hurt. It, as a minimum, has been proven to boost immune function, which we could all use a little bit of. So Janoderma sugae, or the red reishi, or the hemlock reishi, or varnish shelf reishi, whatever you want to call it, grows exclusively on hemlock. Midsummer, and this guy's just starting to sporulate. We're going to turn it over after we cut it off, and we're going to look at it. The biggest thing when you're harvesting this mushroom is that it is completely white on the bottom side. If it is rust or buff color, kind of like on top, then it is no good, and you no longer should even think about harvesting it. Just leave it. This one is beautiful, prime white specimen. Ideally, there would be a white leading edge, which we still have the remnants of here around the outside. So this is still a good one to harvest. And we're going to take this back to the farm and we're going to dry it out. We're going to turn it upside down, place it in the sun, and then if it's rainy, etc., pull it out of the sun, put it in the wind. We like to dry things in a natural fashion wherever possible. If you are using dehydrated dry mushrooms, the lowest setting, 95 degrees, 100 degrees, whatever it is, that's how you dry mushrooms, just like you would seeds. This guy, what's awesome about this is the fruit. So the mycelium is resident inside this log. And there are other hemlocks here. So the more than likely is more reishi all around us. And if there's not, there's going to be another one here or close by next year. We're transitioning from late summer to early autumn mushrooms, and one of the way we really know that that's happening is when we look around, the chanterelles, or the pale chanterelles, the larger ones, are becoming a lot less frequent. But the small chanterelles are coming on. Chanterelle tubiflorus, otherwise known as the yellowfoot chanterelle, because of the obvious yellowing here at the base, is smaller and much more dainty than their larger cousins. They're also a hollow tube, hence the name tubiflorus. What they lack in stature, they make up for in flavor. These guys are like the most delicious ripe apricot that you've ever imagined. Chanterelle tubiflorus, otherwise known as the yellowfoot chanterelle. This is my favorite mushroom to saute and serve with the bratwurst. It takes a lot of them to make a dish, but what I do is I get them going in a pan with some butter, and then I, have some shallots or onion or whatever going in there, some fresh herbs. And then as it gets towards the end, I see less moisture leaving the pan, and it sound like it's frying. I pour a little bit of IPA in there, or UPA, and a little bit of brown mustard and some maple syrup. And I kind of whisk that all together until it becomes like a glaze of sorts. And I shut off the pan, and you put that over a fresh grilled bratwurst, and it is to die for. You'll have everybody that you're tailgating by asking you, where'd you get that recipe and how did you make it? And this mushroom is the star of the show. Obviously it works with any mushroom, but this one, just that apricot thing, really ties it all together. We're always in oak stands when we find it. Almost every chanterelle up here likes oaks. There are some pine associated chanterelles, especially as you get up towards Marquette and places that are more dominated by that pine type forest ecosystem. But here, where we still have decent hardwoods, it's going to be almost always associated with oak, and you're going to find them in large numbers. But the problem is they're so small, it takes a lot of work. So if you don't mind doing the work, this is an absolutely delicious treat you can find out here in the woods this time of year. So this is turkey tail, or Trametes versicolor would be the Latin. Turkey tail, obviously, it resembles a turkey's tail, and it has these beautiful rings on it. This is one of the most potent medicinal mushrooms, especially for women-specific cancers, one of the ones that oncologists will specifically recommend. And as you see, this medicine grows all around us. It primarily is found in maple and oak stumps, or hardwood refuse like this, where we're in a logging site. They're very common. These are absolutely beautiful, and it's a good time of the year to take them. You don't want to take them if they're dry and they feel like they're crumbly. These are still leathery. They're very much alive. There's a variety of ways that you can use this. The simplest way is to simply just dry it. Put it on a screen in front of a fan or out in the sun to dry it until it's cracker crumbly dry. Then grind it into a powder, and just the slightest little pinch you can work into your coffee or tea regimen. And that's easily that's hands down the easiest way to use this. Beyond that, you could tincture it and go through all the steps to make an extract, just like the little bottles that some people sell. And that works well too. That's a great way to get it in your system daily. But I think more and more, we have the reusable Keurig cup. So when I make a cup of coffee, I used to just put a little bit of powder in there with my coffee. Now I put it in where I grind my beans in a bean grinder, and I put my medicinal mushrooms in there. So it's the kind of coffee I like. And then the different medicinal mushrooms that I'm trying to get the extractions from, and I put it right into my Keurig cup, and I get more than enough out of that, 2-3 cups of coffee in a day. Something that you guys can do at home too is just take this, put it in your forest, make sure it gets adequate shade and moisture. And there's some laws against moving firewood, but we're not going outside of 50 miles and or any crazy stuff like that, so we're totally okay to do this from a forestry perspective, because it's going right into my log yard where I can keep an eye on it and make sure it has plenty of moisture, and I can harvest some turkey tails off of it for years to come. And it doesn't always have to be a cultivated thing. This is babysitting a wild crop like this can pay out big too for you guys. So this is a good one if you happen to run across these in your forest. Definitely make note of where they are and come back and see them again.
Sunflowers, sunflowers, and more sunflowers. 20 acres of them. I was recently in the Rock and Perkins area and paid a visit to Hall Farms where they grow sunflowers for birdseed. This field of yellow has now become a unique UP attraction.
We started planting them 11 years ago, and we plant them for birdseed. We started with 4 acres and now we're up to 20, and we harvest them in mid-October for the black oil seeds. We opened the field to the public about 4 years ago. A couple girls wanted to take senior pictures, and then we had some engagements, and then it just kind of full-blown from there with the internet. So now we have walking paths through them, viewing stands, as you can see, little places to take your pictures, lots of stuff for the kids out front. So they get pretty heavy heads, that's why they bend down like this. They do move when they're little, they'll move with the sun, but now that they've got their heads, they're too heavy to move. Once they've flowered like this, their lifespan is only about 2.5 weeks. The prettiness only lasts that long. And after that, they're making their seeds, and their seeds are getting hard. Right now their seeds are kind of soft and spongy, so they have to make that seed mature so that we can harvest it and the birds can crack it and get some nutrients out of it. These are the black oils. You could press them or you can feed them to the birds. The stripeds are the ones you would roast and eat. This is their heads, and each of these are little flowers that connect to the seed. And you can see the seed is developed under here. Now they'll lose all these little flowers, and they'll lose all their petals, and they'll harden their seeds. And inside each of these shells is what the bird cracks to eat. And you can see it's kind of glossy. That's why it's an oil seed. And you could press that and make oil, but we use them for bird seed. We'll harvest them and we'll store them here. We'll clean them and bag them and sell them right off the farm in the fall. So in about November, you could start buying bird seed here. And there's probably over 2,000 seeds in this head. We'll get about a ton to the acre of seeds. We use a combine with a grain head on it that cuts it, and we'll take the seeds, take the heads in. The combine will roll them through rollers and take the seeds off, and then there's shakers and fans that take all the garbage out. We just want the seed, so the seed goes in the bin and the rest goes on the ground, and we work it back in for fertilizer. And then we'll have corn here next year, and these flowers will be moved back to a different field because they can't go in the same field twice or they'll get mold in their heads. And we don't want their heads to be moldy because they'll fall apart. Then we won't get anything at all. I mean, we do have deer issues, but they spread themselves around. They'll eat their leaves, they'll even bite their heads, but there's so many we don't have too much damage. And the honeybees, we love them because they're what pollinates our heads. They make each of these flowers, and each of these flowers have a seed under it, so that's what we want them to pollinate them. We have walking paths that go through the field and 2 viewing stands and all kinds of opportunities for the kids to stick their heads through and be a cowboy. And we welcome everybody. We see lots of people from San Francisco all the way to New York, and just people from Baraga to Houghton, Marquette, and it's just fun to see where people come from. We got a guest book. We like to have you sign. We like to look back and see, oh, that person was from here. People from Arizona. Actually, we had a lady from New Zealand one year. It's just kind of neat to talk to them and hear where they came from and their stories. It has just bloomed into something kind of crazy. On weekends, we'll see probably 1,000 people a day, and during the week, probably a couple hundred a day. And the stories of where they came from or where they visited from or how they've always wanted to stand in a sunflower field and how beautiful it is. it kind of warms our hearts and makes us happy we're doing it for people.
Well, that's it for this week. Be sure to check out 906outdoors.com, where you'll find the 906 fishing report, TV6 weather, shopping, and more. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next week right here on Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.